I think the first and foremost thing is changing our belief systems. Once our mindset changes, everything is going to change. Our belief system, really believing that we can do things and having a can-do type of attitude and not stop things and limit things and work on fear. So we need to understand that this word fear is not forget everything and run, but is face everything and rise.
My next guest grew up in a house of legends. His sister is one of the most celebrated names in African dance. And instead of following her onto the stage, he built his career in boardrooms, turning around growth for some of the biggest companies in the world. Gilles Amadou Acogny is the co-founder of Acosphere Limited, a global management consulting company he built with his spouse 20 years ago in London. What started working almost exclusively with billion-dollar private equity firms in the US and the UK took an unexpected turn when the UK's Foreign Office invited them to a trade mission across Francophone Africa. This trip changed everything. Today, 70% of Acosphere's business is in Africa, helping companies transform their sales strategy, their leadership, and their growth from Dhaka to Lagos to Cairo. Before Acosphere, Gilles held senior leadership roles at FTSE 100 and Fortune 100 companies across US, Europe, and the Middle East, including being the director of marketing and global accounts at a $1.6 billion software company. Along the way, he had the rare privilege of being mentored by A. Barry Rand, the former CEO of Avis, the former CEO of Xerox, and a board member of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. But Gilles' story doesn't stop at consulting. He spent 30 plus years as an art collector and an informal advisor to African artists, from Lagos to Tokyo to New York, believing deeply that the right marketing and the right platform could help African artists reach the same global success as their counterparties around the world. Born in Senegal, fluent in 6 languages, and named to the 700 African Doers Powerlist 4 years running, Gilles bridges 2 worlds most people never connect: global corporate strategy and African creative excellence. Please welcome Gilles to Africa Capital Connect. Gilles, welcome to the show.
Kwame, thank you so much for having me.
Oh man, you have such an amazing resume. I'm so impressed. I'm so excited to have you here. But before we get into it, I just want to hear your beginning, your story, where you come from, where were you born? I know we mentioned Senegal. Can you run me through the path of your journey, how you got started, where you are today and what you're working on?
I was born on an island, a small island where I'm calling from. That island is called the island of Gorée. It has a historical sound to it because there was a door of no return here, just like in Ghana, on the island of Gorée, because there's a slave house, and now there's a door of return. And a lot of African Americans and people from the Caribbean come back. So I was born here, and I spent a few months here, and then I went to New York. And then with the international responsibility of my father, we traveled around the world, literally. We went to Mauritania, Senegal, Austria. And by the time I was 11, I could speak 5 languages, and I went to Paris and studied my secondary and also university years there before going to the States and teaching at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, an engineering and management school. And I taught there for 2 years. And then I came back to France and started working for Xerox. It used to be an amazing company. You said Xerox, everybody knew about it. You actually said to do a Xerox meant to make a photocopy. That's how big this company was. It also created the laser beam and different things. But I worked for Xerox for 15 years, very quickly in senior management roles. And I have taken away from Xerox sales acumen and sales excellence at a global level. I've taken away from Xerox discipline, which I also got from my years in sports, because I was fortunate as a young man in France to do several French championships in track and field and win one, and basketball as well. And I got that discipline, that rigor, and leadership traits and characteristics that I still carry today from my years at Xerox. So 15 years at Xerox. Then I worked for 2 other FTSE 100. So that's, for those who are in America, it's the equivalent of the Dow Jones, the stock exchange. FTSE 100 is the top 100 companies in the UK. So I worked for the number 2 company in the world in software for banks, Mises at the time. It was private equity that bought that. And I helped them grow their business, grow their people. And once that was done, the person who recruited me went to the number one company in temporary rental of energy, Agreco. And I was for 2 years the sales and marketing director for Agreco. After that, I was in 45. Spoke with my wife and said, what do you think I should do? Should I go for another CEO job or a chief sales and marketing officer? Or should I create my own company? And he reminded me, you told me when we got married that by the time you're 45, you'll be financially independent and you'll have your own business. So this is the time. I said, yeah, I'd forgotten that one. And he said, and by the way, you're the only one who works for somebody else in your family. So you better do something about it. So as I pondered for a little while and I said, okay, I'm going to create my own company. You're right. This is what I'm going to do. There's one condition. And so she listens. She says, what's the condition? And I said, well, you're going to work with me. And she looks at me like this and she says, never, ever, ever. And then when she tells the story, she says, people, that he's a good salesman, because a few days later, she managed to convince me that I should do that. And 20 years later, we're happily married, and 21 years soon, and Acosphere is growing well, hips and bounds. That's my story in a few words.
That's amazing. So before we even get to Acosphere, what other 5 languages do you speak? Because I'm curious now.
So I speak a little bit of English, which is a language that we're communicating in. I spoke English from my early days. I learned English and French at the same time in a little place in between Queens and Long Island called Parkway Village, where my father had his house. He was posted at the UN in 1961. I think he was the first francophone at the UN, just before Kofi Annan from Ghana, who came in 62. So I learned French and English then. Then we went from there when I was 4 and a half to Mauritania, and I learned Arabic there. Then we spent 2 years there. Then we went to Senegal, and I learned Wolof, my home language. So that was 4. And then we went from there to Austria. And I was 8 and a half or 9 years old, and I learned German. And then I learned after that I learned Spanish on top of that at school. So my out of all the languages, my home language Wolof is the rustiest, and then the second rustiest is Arabic, because I don't practice it every day. But everything else is completely fluent.
Gilles, was it your first business you guys started?
That's a good question. It wasn't. My first business was when I was 16 years old, when I was going back to Senegal on holiday. I got the bug passed on to my cousin, and I said, Malou, come on, let's make some money during the summer. I said, oh no, we're going to parties in the evening. We're going to clubs. We should rest during the day. I said, no, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I come and pick you up, and we go to the beaches, and we sell. So we were taking big blocks of ice, and we were breaking it, putting syrup on it, and then a straw, and selling it selling it on. So that was my first entrepreneur kind of thing, and I made good money. I could pay for my clubs, I could pay for my movements, and I could still have a bit of money at the end of the summer. But more seriously, the first business endeavor was buying and trading. When I was teaching at Lehigh University, I was 22, 23 years old. I would go to Senegal and buy artifacts, including fairly significant masks, very big ones. And I would bring them into a special suitcase. And whenever there was a fair, I would sell them. Sometimes I would sell them for 10 times the value, so I'd make a bit of money. That was the first trading kind of business. And later on in life, when I finished my studies and my teaching experience at Lehigh University in 1985, we devised with a number of different young Africans and non-Africans too, the future of higher education, private higher education in Senegal particularly, and in Africa. And that's when the seed of higher education, so university, high quality teaching came to us, led by one friend called Amadou. He's very well known. And we created, 7 years later, in 1992, we created the first private business school in West Africa. And that's called ESM, Institute Superior Institute of Management, I think it is in English. Institut Supérieur de Management, yeah, in Senegal. Today, that institute has 15,000 students a year. 15,000, yeah. I was the first investor, and there's about 7 or 8 of us that helped him at the time.
Wow, that's amazing, man. So what birthed Aquosphere and why consulting? Like, what made you decide to go into that realm? Because it seemed like you have a vast experience in many different subject matter. You've traveled the world as a young man. What made you decide that consulting was the right path for Africa?
You know, when you are ceaselessly doing business for 20 years, and you stop and you wonder, what field should I go into? And I was fortunate; I had different fields that I could delve into. I figured, let me focus on my biggest strengths. And clearly, with the years of experience around the world, leadership and sales and communication were 3 strong pillars. Besides, and this is an advice to anybody who wants to get into business, never leave your last employer on bad blood. Stay very positive. If they let you go, stay positive. If you're leaving, leave on a positive note and keep the contact. So I left on a good note with my previous employer, and they became my first employer, or my first client. And so I figured that leadership, sales, and communication in general, be it sales, be it marketing, be it general communication, would be the pillars of the business that we created. So we started advising people in those fields. That's how it came across.
Initially, I believe you were exclusively working with like private equity firms. And then that one, I guess, meeting into Francophone Africa changed that whole trajectory, right? Into now 70% of your business is now on the continent. What was it about that trade mission across Francophone Africa that changed the company's trajectory? What happened?
So yeah, you're right. The first companies that we worked with were traded on FTSE 100. So Invensys was one of our first large customers, besides my former employer. So that was a Greco. And we worked with Invensys for a good 3 years. And it's a private equity that bought a company from Invensys that carried on working with us. And then they asked us to do more work with them at different firms. But the trade mission is funny. I was sitting in the office beginning of February 2012, and I received a phone call. And hello, this is the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Africa. And I'm like, yes, how can I help you? And they say, well, we're having trade missions, and we try to have one company per industry. There's going to be about 30 British companies and going there, and we would like you to be the consulting firm. And I'm like, this is a joke. I didn't say it to them, but I said, Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst & Young, they have lots of choices before they take us. And I said, but why us? And I said, well, you are related to the 2 countries where we're going. We're going to Senegal, and we know your name resonates there. And then we're going to the Ivory Coast, and we believe your wife's name resonates there. And I said, okay. And I said, can I have your number? I took the number. Give me 24 hours to think about it. And I hung up, spoke to my wife, and he said, let's take it seriously. This is Great Britain. This is not another country. So they're pretty serious when they speak about these things. And so I called them back the next day, Foreign Affairs, Ministry for Africa. So now I knew I stood up and I knew this was serious. And so it took that, because from 2005, when we created the business, until 2012, that was 7 years, we had only worked with FTSE 100 and private equity firms. Really a handful. We could count on two hands our plus clients, because we were going from one to the other. And so we go, And obviously, we meet different business people, but also meet His Excellency President Macky Sall. We meet the same in the Ivory Coast. His Excellency President Alassane Ouattara was not available, but we met his Prime Minister and his ministers and business people, and we realized there is business to be made here. Currently, the revenue that we generate is 90% in the Western world and 10% in Africa. And that 10% is mostly business from those big corporations that we work with. So let's shift it and let's bring value to Africa. And so here's another anecdote. A few days after that, I think it was on the 12th of March, 2012, Nadia and I went to a conference. And we were so proud because it was an African country coming to London to sell to the private equities and to banks to sell the destination of that country. And so the first person comes and she's a superb lady with gray hair. It wasn't Nadia, but she was superb still. And so she comes on stage and she starts dazzling us. She speaks the Queen's English. She's African. She speaks Queen's English. And for 45 minutes, her slides are fantastic. And it's like, when can I go to this country? 600 bankers and investors in the room, and they all stand up. You know how it's rare in the UK. They all stand up and standing ovation at the end. And the next person comes, and technically the next person was very competent, but in terms of public speaking, it was terrible. So 30% of the room went to take coffee, 30% went on to their Blackberries, and the rest of them went, I'm going to doze off, you know? But the second one was like that. The third one was like that. The fourth one was like that. The fifth one was like that. And it was like, we were ashamed. And so when we decided to shift our strategy to Africa, we said the first key competence that we need to work on with our African brothers and sisters is for them to be better when they speak in public, so that the people who listen to them feel the impact, feel the emotion in what they're sharing with them, and take ways that they can act upon. Okay? And so that's how the story started. That's how we decided to come to Africa. And we said, let's focus on public speaking, leadership, and sales. And let's be known for that. And over the period of time, we've trained over 10,000 people in Africa in public speaking. And we're the leaders in that field, I believe.
What would you say the key things are in public speaking, if you had to name like the top 5 things to hone in on when you're having a public speech?
The first one starts way before you are speaking to the public. And I would call it P to the power of 3. Okay? So the first one is something that when I say the name, I always underline it, because everybody, whether it's an American, whether it's the Japanese, I will not say, because they know how to do that better than us. But whether it's a European or an African, we all think that we know this well, but we don't do this well. The first one is we plan. If we want to go somewhere, we have to plan for when it is that we're going to go there, why is it that we going there, who is it that we're going to meet, and how is it that we're going to meet those people. The same thing with an audience, whether it's an audience on screen or whether it's an audience physically present. Why is it that I'm speaking? What is it that they will be interested in? How is it that I'm going to convey that? And what is it that is going to make the difference that they stay with me instead of going to somebody else? That's the first P, planning. You plan it so well that you do what we call retro planning. So you know exactly what you want people to feel, and therefore you do everything you can to be prepared for that. Once you've done that and you have your content, then it is time for you to prepare it. Prepare, rehearse, dry run, keep honing your skill. And once you've done that, the third P is presence. You've got to be here. Right now, Kwame, I'm with you. We're two different parts of the world, but I'm here with you, and I'm with whoever it is that honors us, you and I, for listening to this whenever they listen to this. So those 3 P are so important in public speaking, because if you master that, then, and you multiply that by excellence in execution, the results you're going to have is going to be tremendous, right? So plan. Then once the planning is clear, you have a vision of where you want to go, you know how you want to go there, prepare it, then be present. So present to the nth degree, be completely here, not thinking somewhere else, and being your physical body is here. Your body, your mind, your spirit have to be here. And once you're there, you execute to the nth degree with excellence, and then you get a result. So that's what I would say is really important in public speaking. Obviously, you have other things like, you know, the words you use, the tonality that you use, the various variations in your tonality, your eye contact, etc., etc.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about articulation because I know I'm seeing a lot of articulation training online, and whether or not that has any role to play in the preparation as well.
It does. And so right now, you will see, if you are on social media, you will see a lot of AI-driven courses. You'll see courses from different companies that are online companies. And what they focus on is articulation. Yes, articulation is super important. But if you emotionally not there, you can be super articulate. You're going to be very eloquent. But the person who's listening to you is just not going to connect with you on a human to human basis. So that planning, that preparation, and that presence, that human presence, like, you know, New York Knicks just won, and there's a guy called OG Anunoby, I think. Yeah, from Nigeria originally. He's an amazing player, but he's always looking at you like this. He very rarely smiles. So you have to be present, smiling, you know, becoming to the people that you're speaking to.
That's excellent. Another question I had, when global consultancy comes into Africa to transform the company's sales strategy, for example, who's actually benefiting the most in the long run? Is it the company? Is it the employees? Or is it the company that, or the international clients that the company now serves? Because I feel like companies get better serving these global buyers, but then the value created flow outward, right? It doesn't go back to Africa. It goes to either Europe or the US or whatever those clients are that are based in. So who's benefiting most from these trainings you're providing to these companies?
So if you're speaking from our standpoint, then the clients and the client of our clients benefit the most, because we generally take, on top of any methodology that we can bring from the Western world, we adapt that to the cultural environment of the various countries where we operate. So we will not operate exactly the same way in Ghana or in Nigeria or in a francophone country like Senegal or the Ivory Coast. But we know, or if we don't know, we infuse ourselves with the culture of the local countries where we operate. And then we make sure that that there is a correlation between the methods that we're teaching them and the way their culture functions. I'll give you a good example. If you're an American company or if you're a British company, you deliver trading and you ask for your money right away. If you're an African company and you do that, you may be able to really, you know, pressure the customer to pay you at the time you want to be paid, but then you might not have any more business with this company. Even worse, you might not know where it's coming from, but a lot of doors will close for you because people speak. So I'm not saying that you should accept the slowness in payments, and this is not everywhere. The best payer we've ever had anywhere in the world are the Nigerians. They always pay before the job is done. You know, I must underline this. And we have payers that are slow in the UK, in France. It's not just in Africa. But one thing you can do is negotiate with people in a friendly way, in a non-abrasive way, not like a New York type of way, with the African clients in advance and ask them for an advance. And you do this nicely, and it actually works. But otherwise, you can be waiting for your money for a few days, a few weeks, or a few months, when not a few years. You know, but you will in 90+% of the time, you will always recover your money with African companies. It's just a question of how do you negotiate it and how do you put the culture in it. So when we train people in sales, I believe the salespeople actually benefit a lot from our exposure to the world and our understanding of the local culture. But ultimately, it is their customers who benefit because they learn to maybe better listen, to remember that they have two ears and one mouth in that order, and not the contrary, and that they must really dig deep into understanding the explicit needs of their customers to be able to meet those, and sometimes to be able to say to the customers, "I don't think I can quite serve you," because that's very powerful too. So I'm not after your money only, but I know this or this person who could actually serve you better than me. And that's a very powerful thing. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, and we believe we bring value to the customers and to their customers.
Gilles, you went from working with these private equity firms that are billions of dollars and everything runs smoothly, hopefully, or maybe not. But now shifting to Africa, what are some of the challenges have you faced outside of the payment issues or what the case may be? What are some of the challenges? Because I feel like Africa as a whole has a huge amount of challenges, right? You have to notice some of the nuances and some of the ways of doing businesses that is not, similar to the US or the UK. So can you elaborate on some of the challenges you faced so far since, you've been doing business in Africa primarily?
Yeah, so I'm gonna rest on my friend Wuzi Fembekwayo to an anecdote from him. He says in one of his videos, I travel the world now, and I train and I speak in public, with the likes of Michael Phelps, 23 times Olympic champion, Michael Phelps. That's Wuzi speaking. And I speak with, he speaks with the likes of Oprah Winfrey on the same stages, etc. And he says, and I see these people, and some of them make 10 times what I make. And I'm like, are they more intelligent than me? And the answer is no. Are they more competent than me? And the answer is no. Do they have better degrees than me? And the answer is no. And very often I have better degrees than them. And so the difference is location. And so the difference of doing business in Africa and doing business elsewhere is really location. And what I mean by that is you need to be careful not to be taken by averages that are below your expectations or your standards of quality when you come to Africa, or when you go some other places. There's some places in Southeast Asia and in Latin America where I would say exactly the same thing. There's some places in Europe where I'd say exactly the same thing. So wherever you are, you have to be careful about keeping your standards at the level that you expect them to be so that you can serve your clients. So that's one of the challenges that you come across. The other one is, and it's related, uh, we are very gregarious in Africa. So, you have to belong to the clan. And if you stand out and you want to stand alone in some ways, for one or another reason, you're an outcast. Okay. But it is my choice. I have been somebody who is quite personable, very warm, and I like to be with other people, but I also like to have my serenity and my peace, and stay away from big, gregarious groups. I like to go to parties and then come back and be, in my own sphere. So the challenge is for people to understand that people want you to be with them constantly. Well, but time is of the essence. And if I want to deliver a good job to my clients, to my community, and to grow, I have to be choosy in who it is that comes into my world. And with time, I've become more choosy and maybe more distant at times from gathering. So challenges are really around the community wanting you to be aggregated, to do things the way everybody else does, about people not understanding if you have standards that you want to sustain and even improve. You want to go towards people who can help you be better, a better version of yourself. And yeah, if you're not very communicative and very much within the family all the time, that is sometimes difficult to go or to understand from the environment. Then the next challenge is I've personally, and I'm not going to make any judgment on it, but I've personally chosen to not serve the um, the political and the governmental kind of industries very much. I come from the private sector, from the private business. I like to do a job and be paid quickly. And so I respect the work that I do with governmental agencies, and I'm grateful for it. But sometimes it's difficult for the counterparts to understand that we work with a private sector kind of mentality, and we don't have a salary coming at the end of the month, but we need to pay our employees fast. So yeah, these are the things that I would say about challenges.
That's great. That leads me into my next question, because I feel like every time you go to Africa and there's problems with companies, the easy answer is always the government fault, right? How the structure of the government is and how the bureaucracy works. Now, you going into a company as a consultant, what is the main problem? Is it governance problem, or is it the leadership failure, or is it the system failure? What are you seeing mostly to be the issues with these companies that you're trying to work with?
So there's no one size fits all. So it's individual problems in different companies, but you will see as a recurring theme companies that don't have strong processes and that go along with things that are written on paper but that are actually not done every day. So you'll have a sales team that has maybe once a month, once every quarter, a team meeting, and they're surprised that they don't deliver the results. You dig in and you ask the salespeople, what are your objectives? Oh, well, we have some collective objectives. All right. And what are your individual objectives? Well, they're not quite clear. Well, if you don't know where you're going, if you get there, you won't know if you've reached the place that you wanted to go to. So these are some of the things that I see from a commercial standpoint. From a leadership standpoint, I think it's only recently that the companies that we deal with across Africa, but particularly in the Francophone West African countries, understand the value of investing in the human beings. And I'm not trying to insult anyone, but the investment in training, in preparation, in coaching, in mental preparedness is something that's quite recent. And quite recently, people have understood. When we first came into the marketplace, 2012 to 2015, we worked only in Nigeria. And then from there onwards, we worked in the Francophone environment. I remember conversations, even with head of HR, where they were saying, well, yeah, your soft skills training it's interesting. It's good to have, nice to have, but we're serious here. We do technical training. Yeah, just for them to realize a few years later that, yeah, technical training is important. But if you don't have the soft skills and the capability from a human interaction standpoint of really winning over people, you won't go far. So 2026, more and more companies in the Francophone environment are understanding that it is important to invest in soft skills, invest in human beings. And that's one of the things that we see. So processes, lack of processes at times, lack of understanding of the human capital and the investment you need to make there. These are some of the trends that we see in different companies. But again, in every company, it's going to be something different of a challenge or a problem that we come across.
So you were mentored by Barry Rand, a man who's well respected in the Black community. What are some of the things he taught you about, navigating the power and the leadership role as a Black man in rooms that you weren't built for you, right? And how do you pass that along to some of these African leaders? Because sometimes we walk in a room and we could tell, we're the only Black person in the room, and we have to stand up and represent the entire Black nation. How have you navigated that? And what are some of the things that Barry has probably taught you about that?
First thing about Barry is I remember his smile and his laugh. And Barry was somebody who enjoyed life tremendously. But he enjoyed also just having fun, but working hard and having fun. So you work hard and you play hard. These were some of his principles. If I take 5 things that he taught me, and he taught us, I was privileged to be very close to him, but I was not the only one You know, I'm thinking of people who went on to lead major corporations also who were with him, is work hard, play hard. So work hard, that means if you have to be at the office at 2 o'clock in the morning and the next day you have to be there at 7, you will be there. Whenever something needs to get done, it needs to get done. Be true to your word. So if you say something, you're going to do it. And if you can't do it, you're going to communicate with the people to make sure that nobody is flustered or nobody is taken advantage of, or nobody feels they have the short end of the leash. So that's another one. The third one is the confidence. You've got to have confidence yourself, in your capability, in your company, to be able to deliver whatever service it is that you're delivering. So I will stay. I said 5, and I'll say these 3. These are 3 things that clearly I've taken from my mentor Barry Rand, and that I've seen him convey around the rooms that he was in. But let me go to a 5th. I spoke about presence, and I think when I think about it, Barry had an amazing presence. His spirit walked into the room before he walked in the room himself. You know, there was like, he walked in the room and the room was enlightened. And that's what that's the presence I am talking about, that people have to have. So he was completely here. And when he was listening to you, he was listening to you intently and with intensity as well. So presence would be my 4th.
Gilles, so I'm a small company. I'm listening to you on this podcast. I'm like, Gilles has worked with some of the, $1 million private equity firms. He's working with big companies. There's no way I can afford him. There's no point even reaching out to him. He's not going to take my business. He's not going to take me as a client. What do you say to that person listening right now?
So I had one earlier today, and I just said to her, when I coach somebody, usually we take a contract for 5 days or more, and that will be a figure $20,000 and upwards. Okay, some are 2 or 3 times that. But so if I'm going to do this with individuals who can afford it, and I'm going to give them a lot of quality, the best thing that a smaller size company could do is to take 1 or 2 of our courses, which will be a fraction of that, and they can train either one person or several people in soft skills and human competencies that are extremely important for them to have, and that would cost them tens of thousands of dollars in private coaching. So I suggest always either to do that through a team building kind of environment, if it's a half a day or something, or a full day or a few days of training, which will be, just a fraction of what it would cost to do that. And everybody that wants it can do it, unless they have no money at all. But then I may just take an hour or so to just discuss with them.
Yeah, I want to get into your love for art. What got you into art and trying to help other Africans, put out the art out there and show the world what they could do? So what got you into art?
I guess it comes from several things. The family first. My mother, particularly, as far as I remember, has always had an eye for art. She liked, to have a very nice interior, but she also liked to buy paintings. And she was given also paintings of her children, her family, by a couple of famous artists that we had. Some of my cousins are famous painters. I was going to switch around, but I'm actually going to turn this around for a second. And this painting was done by one of my cousins, who is one of the masters in painting in Senegal and in Africa. Peace be with him. He passed, Suleiman Keita.
Condolences.
Yeah, thank you. And my older brothers were playing the guitar. So I picked up the guitar as well. And my sister, as you mentioned, is a dancer. So art has always been part of our of surroundings and our family. And so we have developed this eye for it. And when I was younger at school, as well as with my parents, I would go to museums everywhere. So I've developed this interest, keen interest, this kinship with art. And when I was 28, I think I started buying paintings, buying art, and that's how my love of art comes from the family initially.
The Western art market has always benefited or profited more from African art than the African country or the African artists themselves. Has that process changed?
Well, it's changing slightly. Yesterday, one of my stories on Instagram was a story about who is it called? About France that has passed a law to restitute all stolen art from African countries. So over the past 12 years or so, there is a young Moroccan, French, English lady who's created an art fair called 154. And that fair goes from London to New York to Marrakesh and now to Hong Kong, I believe, and Paris. And she promotes African art. So she has done a lot for African arts, for the value of African arts to be bigger. It still remains, I think, when she has her open days for art collectors, I think the balance is still more than 50% Westerners, but it is in Western countries that people come. But there's a lot now of Africans who invest in African art. So the balance is tilting, but it's just because of an exposure and type of education, where maybe for some brothers and sisters from Africa, the family has not necessarily emphasized how important art is, but that may just be my perception. I think today there's more and more collectors that are of African descent for African art, but still a lot of Westerners who like it.
With a career split between transforming Fortune 100 companies into what they are today and also champion African artists, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for the humanity in me and the interest that I've had and that I have in the human beings' well-being and in their ability to break limits and believe that they can break through walls, break through patterns, break through preconceptions, go beyond any first limiting belief, but also complex that they may have, and reach their full potential. So I want to be remembered as somebody who has a lot of humanity in him, and that has affected lives and transformed lives by a touch of magic.
If you could pick one to do for the rest of your life, either doing consulting work or helping artists.
Definitely pick helping artists. It's much more rewarding than everything else. Helping an artist is helping artists.
What motivates you?
Just being happy. And I've understood, probably going into my 50s, I understood that nobody's going to bring you happiness but you. I understood it before, but maybe to really grasp the concept, I understood that. So I get up the morning and I do whatever it is that I need to do with joy, and the joy that I have in my life. Sometimes it is family or friends who bring me that joy, and I'm very grateful. But for the most part, you create your happiness, and then you grant happiness to others, etc. So that would be it.
Before I get into my rapid fire questions, I just want to ask you if there's any important topic that we did not discuss today.
I think we need to consider very, very seriously these statistics. I may not have the right statistics. In the world that we live in, the sports industry represents, I think, about 5% of GDP. And in Africa, it represents, I think, 0.5% or 1% of GDP. The opportunity is huge. We have competencies, we have capability, physical capability, and also the mindset to be great in sports and to develop sports in Africa at a very fast pace. As a matter of fact, the NBA is developing in Africa at a very fast pace. Track and field is developing. Football is an incredible turning point. The sports industry is something that one should not miss if we consider coming back to Africa for the diaspora, or if consider just where can I bring value, in which industries can I bring value. Yeah, that would be what I would say.
We talk a lot about investing in opportunities. Let me talk about a different kind of investment for a second. Your health is your highest return on investment. That's why I created a brand called Bow Action. We make Vestly Pro adjustable weighted vest, currently on Amazon. The vest adds up to 35 pounds to your body weight, including wrist and ankle weights. If you're serious about investing in your health and not just your portfolio, and you want to support this channel and what we're building, please check out the link in the description below. Every purchase goes directly into keeping these conversations going. Thank you very much for your support. Let's get into our rapid fire question. What is your biggest win so far?
My family, my kids, my 2 kids and my wife.
What is your biggest mistake?
Being intolerant at times in my life, and through that, not allowing some really strong relationships with others.
If you could go back and tell your 25-year-old something, what would that one thing be?
It'd be do more, do faster, and enjoy life. So do more of the things that you did and that you naturally did. Go even faster, fail hard, and raise again, and learn from the failure, which is just a step towards success.
What is one book that changed your thinking?
Think and Grow Rich, and Napoleon Hill. In terms of development, personal development, that it took me a long time to read it. But once I read it again, and it's an amazing book.
$10,000 to invest in Africa. Where would it go?
Okay, so if I had 10,000, I would diversify it. I would take a portion of it and put it onto the stock exchange. BRVM for the Francophone countries. I'd put it onto right now onto I think it's in September that it comes public, onto the IPO of Mr. President Aliko Dangote's company, and take a piece of that and leave it there until it continues to grow and become millionaire maybe. I would then take a portion of it and buy some lands. I would take maybe half of it and buy some land, and I'd take a quarter of it and invest in shares. I would take a quarter of it and put it into into reserve. So this is something that you always have to keep a bit of money, 25% if you can. That's good. And I would put it into a fast growing savings account, or bond, or whatever it is, but where you can draw that money if you need it. And I put probably 50% of it into land, buying land, or buying into property.
What's one thing that needs to change for Africa to reach its potential?
I think the first and foremost thing is changing our belief systems. Once our mindset changes, everything is going to change. And a good proof of it is what President Patrice Talon has been able to do in Benin over the past 10 years. That country is radically different from what it was. And when you speak to people, their mindset is totally renewed, is amazing, really. So our belief system, really believing that we can do things, and having a can-do type of attitude, and not stop things and limit things and work on fear. So we need to understand that this word fear is not forget everything and run, but is face everything and rise.
Can Africa ever unite as one country?
I was on a podcast with Tommy Davis, which I think was released today on my page. And Tommy Davis said, one of the things for the future is for people to understand that the strongest thing that we need to do is unity and collaboration. And without unity and collaboration, our systems will always crack. Somebody will always be able to come and play with our minds, play with us. Maybe give money to one of us, and get us away from collaborating, from working together. So unity and collaboration is fundamental for the growth of Africa, for the growth of any country, of any business, of any family unit. But it's really important for us Africans.
So do you think we can unite as one country eventually?
I think we can unite. I think there are movements that are showing this. Again, Benin is a very good example of what to do and how to do it. The new president is following on the footstep of the previous one. As a matter of fact, it seems that he's accelerating. Over a period of 10 days, he's visited the 8 countries of the West African economic community and shown clear signs that he wants to bridge the gaps and unite and work together and collaborate.
My last and final question, Gilles. Every episode I ask the guest to leave something on what I call the bridge, something specific for the audience, a specific resource, a specific contact, a specific opportunity, something meaningful that they could utilize on a day-to-day basis and start investing in Africa or start, going back to the continent. What's that one thing you want to leave on the bridge?
Before you walk on the bridge, you have to come to the bridge. Okay, so if you're from the diaspora, but you're not spending a lot of time in Africa, come and see what's happening here. Come and get the contacts. And this is true for Africa, it's true for anywhere in the world, because if you're not here, you're not considered. You're considered as a tourist, somebody passing by. So the discussions with you will not be as serious as they can be. So you really, whether you're African or not, and you want to do business, or you just want to enjoy Africa, you have to come, spend some time, understand how people function. And once that happens, the possibilities are humongous. And it's a game of give and take. So whatever you give, you receive, not necessarily from the person you gave it to, but from the community and the environment. So my takeaway would be come, listen, smell, hear, speak, communicate with the community, come on the bridge, understand what's happening, gauge your opportunities. They are infinite, and you will figure out what's really best for you and for the communities you're trying to serve or you're trying to interact with.
That's excellent, man. Thank you. Gilles, thank you so much for the opportunity, for letting me interview you. You're doing so much for the continent. I wish you all the best success.
Thank you so much, Kwame. I'm delighted to have been here. Thank you for the questions, for the insights, and be blessed. Continue to strive and to inspire a lot of people.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much.